of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going to go out of order just for 1 minute. Dan, you want to come up? I know you got somewhere else you have to be, so I'll take you up first here.
I do appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And the roads capital budget is on page 7, but I'll bring it up on the screen if you want to.
I could start at grounds, actually,
Okay.
with a quick item. Last week, we discussed the requested front mount mower for the grounds department. And the question was raised about switching to a mid-mount zero turn to save some money. I did review that with Mark Dixon in the Buildings and Grounds Maintenance Supervisor. And we could, as a matter of operation, use a mid-mount and just coordinate which places that is used at, but it would be very beneficial to get. And the net result of that change would be reducing the request from about $36,000 to $23,575. So about $13,000 less for a mid-mount mower. And that is something that would still be a very beneficial request. I can work with Pat to have that updated, but that is one area we saw that we identified we could have some
They had
cost
no
savings.
problems with that.
Right. Right now, they have all front mounts, and they're any mower could go to any site. It would just take a little bit of planning at the start of the week to say, okay, we're gonna use the mid-mount for X, Y, Z, and let the front mounts take care of everything else. But operationally, we could accommodate that into the fleet, so.
Any questions from me?
No, I just just make sure that, we're not gonna be able to use it,
No.
save that money, but
Like I said, with a little bit of planning, we can incorporate it into the fleet and maintain the current level of service. With regards, for the roads department, there were some questions last week that I can speak to. I told you I'd get back with some answers. The first of which being the priority of the vehicle requests. After review, the requested dump truck would remain our top priority. The A-boom tractor, whether it was as requested in a supplement or as a replacement, would be the number 2 priority, the A-boom.
The A-boom?
A-boom tractor, yes.
Okay.
If that were a replacement, we would anticipate that the trade-in on the current tractor would be around $25,000. The request is made to purchase as a supplement, but if that weren't an option, we would certainly accept a trade-in of the
But your
current one.
preference would be to just buy one and have 2?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, the current tractor gets about 5 weeks. Every 5 weeks of work, it needs multiple days of service. So it's actually in the shop right now. It requires regular maintenance and servicing. Everything from standard maintenance to issues with the frame. There's a lot of hydraulic systems on it. So it would be beneficial to have 2, but even replacing what we have and trading in what we have would be a noted improvement. And I think the trade-in value would be $25,000 for that. We've done some further shopping for our third priority, the bucket truck. The budget reflects a $100,000 cost for a used bucket truck to replace our current one. We have been able to identify a few that would fit our needs at the $80,000 mark. So we can reduce that cost by $20,000. That is proposed to be a replacement, and the resale value we anticipate for that would be between $8,000 and $10,000. And we did review in detail the surface treating program. The number ones on the list, at the top of the list, those total about $221,000. The number two identified roads, the second priority, is a total of about $115,500. And if needed, whether we look to consider certain roads, not consider certain roads, or if a lump sum budget was apportioned, the initial cuts would come out of those twos. But the breakdown is that the top priority being $221,000, with the next highest priority grouping that we presented at $115,500. So that is the breakdown. Those are the updates I have from last week.
That's it. I mean, that's it.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions? Albert?
No, sir.
John?
Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I think the only other thing we talked about was the Nicholson surface treatment, if there was a possible reduction.
There is, I don't have the exact amount, Right now, we're proposing to tar and chip over the existing and increase the area to include the dump area, some of the dumpster areas that are not currently paved or surface treated. I believe off the top of my head, it's around $20,000 in savings to just do the additional area and grow the surface as opposed to redoing the whole thing. That is a number I can confirm this week.
We can check, yeah?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay, Dan, well, thank you for coming in, and,
absolutely.
all right. Next up, we have Mr. Tim O'Brien, council member, and Larry DeRay, town manager. Mr. O'Brien, you gave us a list of some issues you wanted us to take a look at, and we thought we'd have you come back and maybe answer some questions about some of them. I think the one thing that caught our interest was maybe your public bathrooms that you were asking for some help with. You want to tell us a little bit about that project?
Yeah, thank you for the invite back on this part. And considering some of our previous requests, I'm happy to have Larry DeRay, our new town manager, here. You might be the only commissioner that remembers the last time a Chestertown town manager was here in front of you to request some items. The town restroom specifically, Chestertown has not had a public restroom. I don't think it's ever had one. We have Tea Party, we have massive events. We've relied essentially on the businesses to provide public restrooms. Our waterfront was essentially the 98 Cannon Restaurant, was nice enough to allow people to do that. It's a basic public service, and it's been way overdue. We have very limited space to provide a public restroom that's, up to standard and ADA compliant. Because of the historic center, it's going to be quite expensive, but it's a long overdue public service that we're trying very hard to provide. We set aside $150,000 of our ARPA funding for that. The estimate is between $220,000 to $250,000 for it. We're trying very hard to get enough to provide, to get a construction started this year. So any additional support of the county, this is basic for tourism, this is basic for basic health, so.
Where would you be locating it?
We are
If
still.
that's really any of our business probably, but just out of curiosity.
There's one site that is currently proposed behind, it's a town-owned sliver in the parking lot behind the former Dunkin' Donuts. There's that pass-through, past River Arts. There's a parking lot in the back. There's a very slim sliver of town-owned property that connects all the way to Cannon Street, where we could connect. That is the current proposal. It is, that is preliminary because it's still, It's still very difficult to find an exact spot because of infrastructure and distance to the sewer, et cetera. There's a lot of opposition to having it anywhere near Fountain Park, for example. We have several options, but that is the principal one at the moment.
And this, the estimated cost that you're talking about, that takes into consideration hooking up to the sewer and all?
From ground up, laying the pipes, I mean, there's nothing, there's no current infrastructure, it would have to be the whole, and we're basing it off of St. Michael's recently. We spoke to them, and they have a very nice bathroom that's of the proper size, and it was about $250,000. And then there's a basic level, but to one that provides all the services, it gets quite pricey.
And I think your request from us was 80,000, is that what, I think you were asking that?
Correct. That was what we felt was a modest and approachable price to ask from you. More the better, but we felt was a reasonable ask to help us provide that in a timely fashion.
Any questions, John?
So the bathrooms, how many, obviously there's going to be male and female bathrooms. How many of each are you anticipating?
We probably anticipate one stall of each. And then if we can have a sort of handicap, larger, not gender-specific, but family-oriented, which would include the baby changing station, separate from the urinal and the stalls. I think that would be, most advantageous. This way, mom's got to change the baby. She doesn't have to do it in a place that's otherwise functioning as a public toilet. And, we've looked at the security of the need to put lights and locking doors after a certain time, so that $250,000 really buys us a completely ADA accessible, modern, safe, secure location. At this point, we've been looking at facilities long enough that we've asked ourselves a lot of questions and done a lot of research. So I don't want to say this is the state-of-the-art Cadillac version, but it's going to be a version that fits the bill. We heard from one of in fact, the new president of the Downtown Association last night. We're expecting 15,000 people, given good weather, for the Tea Party. They're going to keep a plumber, literally they'll keep a plumber on call to the tune of $800, because they've only got one stall of each to accommodate what may be thousands of people going in and out of their door. So the need for a public facility on those event days is clear. The need for a public facility in general is something we experience all the time. Town's made efforts. We keep the visitor center open 360 days of the year. And most of the time, the visitor center doesn't serve as a visitor center. It serves as a public accommodation with 2 ADA accessible bathrooms. So the more we can do to make it available where people are and limit the pedestrian back and forth, obviously the better. We've looked at a couple of other things that we can do even within our building, do some changing of the current structure, the plumbing at the Sereno Center, to be able to arguably open those bathrooms up to the public again, and not just for the boaters. And then had a, talk all the time about replacing those 3 porta potties, construction quality grade porta potties, by the way, at Wilma Park, with either porta potties under a shed like Oxford does, or an actual, again, plumbed public facility. So it's a lot of people coming and going along our waterfront. We want to make it so that nobody has to do that much of a walk, whether it's mom with the kids or somebody with mobility issues, somebody coming off the parking lot. And that's our grand plan for public facilities in the downtown and waterfront area. But right now, we're asking for 1/3 partnership on one of them.
Very good. Any other questions?
No, you answered my question. I was going to ask if the Sereno Center had bathrooms that were open to the public, but I'm assuming they don't.
They're open to the boaters right now.
Okay.
So if we were to commit the funds that you've asked for this project, is there an assurance that the location would be somewhere downtown and not Wilmer Park?
That would be the goal for right now, yeah. It would be that location that we've talked about.
That would be the first
Right.
project.
Yeah, there's been some pushback against putting a permanent facility where the mobile, if you know our mobile facility, it's a trailer, right? I mean, it's one stall on each side. It's not ADA accessible, it's not plumbed into anything. There's a water tank so you can wash your hands until the water runs out. But there's been some pushback against putting a permanent facility there. So we don't want to deal with too much pushback. Keeping in mind, our designer is also going to have to go to our Historic District Commission, so that might take a little while to make them happy on a design. But we're confident we can develop a design, and the goal would be to have at least that facility up and going by May 1 of next year.
Yeah, for service of the downtown specifically.
I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I think all three of us basically are very interested in this project. And, now's not the time for us to make it a final decision. It looks like it might be favorable at this point.
Appreciate that.
We appreciate you coming. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Tim, you and I met the other day and talked about some other things that maybe the county could try to assist with to help Chestertown from time to time. One was the IT service. In talking with some folks, I think we are interested in trying to help you do that, but we would want to have an audit done by our IT people to see exactly what type of firewalls and what type of security infrastructure you currently have in Chestertown, to make sure that what we're doing is going to be good for you all.
Yeah, I would agree with you. That would be the first step, just to see what would be compatible and what kind of man-hours we would be potentially asking for some service to provide, especially the police department, as your IT already services the sheriffs in the same building. Potentially as well some service with just maybe an annual cybersecurity assistance. Small towns are very vulnerable to that, and that's a very specialized and requirement that I know that you guys have a capability of doing. That would save us having to focus on that and focus on just the technical aspect of it. So, but an audit would be a great first step.
And I don't think it's really this is going to affect the budget one way or the other at this point.
No, exactly. So what the audit would basically tell us after it was done is what IT needs, the town would need, not our budget, but that would be their budget, to bring them up to where the recommendation would be. So that would likely happen in your, it's obviously not going to happen in your FY25 budget unless it were some sort of contingency. But, so that's not our budget, that would be, yeah.
So is it possible that we could start engaging with Chestertown?
Absolutely.
With Scott Boone's staff and
I'm going
if
to be
they're in
perfect.
agreement?
I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I thought Scott Boone was helping out in the town. Now, are you now hooked up to the high-speed internet that was put through town, your office?
Yeah, to the visitor center, the one that, yes, that
But to
happened.
your office, to the town hall?
Is that, I believe it was.
I believe so, yeah.
But it was just
It's
done
a
in the
nice-
last few years.
That
Right,
it-
but it has been an anchor site, but I think you just recently tapped into it, if I'm not mistaken.
It had been set up to be an anchor site, but it had not been connected until recently. The work, Scott Boone is great, and he's been working, and had good communication, but we have no MOU with the IT department, and it has basically been informal. And so therefore, in the past, for example, that Scott has suggested that they had some surplus computers. During COVID, you switched to laptops. They had some nice surplus computers that were up to date, but there was really he didn't know of a formal way to communicate or if he was allowed to offer surplus, et cetera, just because there was no existing MOU, only informal communications. And it would just be nice to have your staff know how and when they can communicate with us on certain things.
Well, why don't we try to get an audit done of exactly what you guys might have to put in place, and then draft up an MOU at that point to try to help you out from here on out.
Okay.
And that way it's clear.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
That would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yes.
One of the other things that we discussed was planning and zoning. Our planning and zoning folks are very, very busy and sometimes overwhelmed. But on occasions, if they were asked, maybe this needs an MOU also, that maybe they could give some guidance or some oversight if needed, from time to time, to move some of your projects ahead a little faster. If that's what you were talking about, Tim.
That would be helpful, yes. Specific.
I don't know what that looks like as far as time-wise.
Well, specifically, we're currently updating the comprehensive plan, the 10-year comprehensive plan for Chestertown. We are overdue for essentially a zoning updates. We need, professional technical assistance to go through a lot of different things. Larry can speak to that. He's coming on board and reviewing what we do have on the books. And, Larry's done a lot in less than a year, but there's a lot of backlog of these types of things that it necessarily needs a lot of time and a technical eye. We currently do not have the funding to do that, and it's only will delay us getting ourselves up to speed if we are unable to bring in someone soon.
I think if it's a quick question, just pick up the phone and give them a call. If you're looking for more oversight or guidance during the process, I would reach out to MDP. I don't know if you've done that or not, but David Dahlstrom with MDP, his office is in Centerville, and that's what he does.
Yeah, I've spoken with him, we're correct.
Right,
But
right.
it's, that's for the comprehensive plan work, but not just a review and assistance to bringing our planning and zoning up as a base, getting everything, and incorporating our strategic plans of working to increase housing, accessibility, and just a lot of things that have been not updated for quite some time.
I think that would require staffing. I'm not sure that we have the capacity to do something like that. Like I said, if it were a quick phone call, not a
We're
problem.
seeking something to bring in a professional to focus on that specific task. And that was the additional $50,000 was to have that professional advice, so that it's not, we don't have the staff and Larry doesn't have the time to do that personally. But that would help us accelerate our ability to be more flexible. That impacts economic development. That impacts a lot of the housing availability, that we're up to date on everything and essentially knowledgeable as soon as people want to make a development or something. So.
I believe that type of request would, I would defer to Bill, but I think that would require additional staffing. I think they are, what Bill says to me is they are at capacity. They're not over capacity, but they are at capacity right now. So to take on a big project like that would require more man hours.
Right.
There was one project that we spoke briefly about that I feel would benefit both the county and the town if it were to move forward. And maybe when you have something of that magnitude, we could discuss it and try to offer whatever we could offer to make it move forward a little faster.
And if it's a specific project, the developer,
This was a big one.
if it's a specific project, a big project, then the developer would pay for a planner to come on board to help the town. That's generally how that's done. So part of the fee would include basically, some sort of one of the professional developing planner firms to come on board as a consultant to help with the town.
But the
So that's
bottom line
not-
is, the bottom line is, we want to help you if we can.
Yeah.
And so don't ever hesitate to ask if you need help. We're certainly going to ask you when we need help. The other thing that I thought was a pretty small item for us to maybe think about doing, they asked for some assistance maybe twice a year trimming back the shrubbery off of the trail, which we just talked about the mower.
Right, that's no problem. We could do that most any time,
You just
couple
have to
times a
coordinate it
year.
with our public works department.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
but that's our start.
Okay.
Unless somebody else has
Yeah,
something
that's
else they
good.
want to.
There was just there was a few requests for the volunteer,
Fire company.
assist the fire, volunteer fire department. There was a request for assistance for a generator, an emergency generator that, as they're the emergency shelter. Theirs was bought in the 1980s, and it's,
Well, we give, I think our take on that was we give that fire company over $100,000 each and every year. So they can do what they want.
okay,
We already contribute to that.
okay.
Now, if they needed a letter of support for a grant for the generator, we would certainly be willing to do that.
Absolutely.
You know, we pursued the funding, I think, for about $220,000. It included the well, it's more than that now. Included the generator and the, some window repairs. If you go around the back of the building, you can see that the windows are in pretty poor shape, and the parking lot. So those two numbers, 150,000 and 90 for the generator and 90,000 for the repaving of the parking lot are accurate, because we put that into our earmark request that we sent off in March. And we may very well be submitting that same set of projects for CDBG. That's a discussion yet to happen with mayor and council. So just be confident that those numbers are more or less accurate. All right, and we didn't get the engineer in, but talking to the fire company, we're confident that that number is pretty accurate. 90,000, 95,000 will get that parking lot paved, and the new generator, 150,000.
And that, part of that was, we did specifically, we gave like $450,000 to assist with the purchase of the new fire truck out of our ARPA funding. It was a request, there was a funding shortfall. I know that the county supported that fire truck as well. And we were requested to help as best we could. Fortunately, we were able to. It was a tough decision. We all supported it. Those guys put themselves on the line during COVID. But we also have not had the money to invest in the building, which the town owns the building, and we give it rent-free to the fire company. But in that case, we also have not had the money to maintain the building as it should be. And that's part of was that ask. Because we gave the ARPA to the fire truck, we were unable to invest in the maintenance of the firehouse itself. But that was that request. I know that you guys give a lump sum to the fire departments in general, and they divvy it up essentially. But that was hopefully, because we're starting this process kind of new, or we're kind of starting from scratch here in this whole budget process, we wanted to throw that out there, something hopefully you guys could support, because the town did quite a bit to support the fire department, and we continue to do so. But unfortunately, we're unable to afford the maintenance on the building itself to where it should be. And the other request was also to the $50,000 for extending the Kent County Visitor Center, which the town has maintained 100% for many years. But I believe we're coming to the end of our ability to do that. 365 days a year was essentially how it had been funded. I know Larry has had an opportunity to evaluate, our core staff compared to our supporting the visitor center, and has recommended some cutbacks. That $50,000 would allow us to continue to maintain a presence, which basically represents the whole county.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
John?
I think so.
Okay.
Not right now.
Oh, I appreciate your time. Actually, just two quick follow-ups, not for us personally, but I would request, I know the library is putting in a request to the commission for the rehabilitation of the African-American Yellow House at the back of the library. That's a very important meeting spot in town. I hope you would support that request, and I hope you also, Menary's Dream Alliance is putting in a request, I believe, for extending the after-school programs at the middle school. That is a very important program for Chestertown youth, and we hope you would support their program as well. That keeps a lot of kids occupied after school, before parents come home. It's very important for for our youth, that is something that we're not able to offer. But it would be very important if you could support that.
So the Hearst House funding was actually approved as a grant. So that's
Okay.
going to roll out.
Thank you, I did not know that.
Yep. And the MDA after-school program is through the LMBs, which is basically state funding. So that's not even, that's why you haven't heard about it during the budget process.
Well, I appreciate your time then, and just, I hope that, I feel very positive going forward, that if your staff is also able to reach out to us, just keep Chestertown on your mind. If there's something to surplus, like a dump truck or something that's out there, Larry, I believe, is open to communicate with anyone on your staff, and anything else to say?
No, I appreciate your time and the consideration of these items. Everything you have got in front of you is a benefit for the county as well as the town. So hopefully our list is not overbearing, but we think it's important for benefit of both of us.
Dan, we're going to have
They're
an
very
extra
practical.
truck, right? When this new one, when the other new one comes in, right?
Yes, sir.
And we'll be because we've done that in the past, in my time here.
That's my understanding.
I think we've either come close to giving them to the towns, if whoever asked for them, or if it was $5,000, that was a ton of money. But I don't think we've ever, I think anytime we have one that I know when I was town manager of Rock Hall, we got one from the county, and it was, it's no more than we used them. They lasted another 10 years probably. So you might want to talk to Dan, put your name in if he has one come available. I'm sure we wouldn't have any problem with it going to you or any other town.
Thank you.
So just keep in touch with him, and he can tell you when it's going to come. In closing, that the comments you made about the town manager and a representative from the town coming before us, you were right. This may very well be my first in 26 years.
Hopefully, definitely not the last. So.
We hope not.
We hope not. We hope that the level of communication between the county and the town continues. It's going to benefit everybody.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Have a good one. Thank you for
Appreciate it.
coming in.
Thank you for your time.
Mr. John Queen, Bayside Hoyas.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon.
In front of you, you all should have the pamphlet for the things we're going to discuss today. Today, myself, John Queen, President of the Bayside Hoyas organization. This is the Vice President of the Bayside Hoyas, Henry Sabetti, but he will also, at moments during this, speak as a community partner with this program we're going to talk about today at Shrewsbury Parish Church. So this should be the first page, Hoya Empath. This is a program about poverty that we're going to discuss today with you all. Empath being economic mobility. The next slide will just be asking who are the Hoyas, and you go to that, it'll be our mission statement. With our mission statement, we promote academic excellence, positive character development, and civic responsibility among secondary age students and youth and young adults. We work to achieve this mission through educational enrichment, mentoring, leadership, training, health promotions, and public service projects. Some of the programs we have done in our 11-year existence in King County are college preparation programs with Washington College, Junior Hoyas, leadership development, mentoring, but the one we have kind of honed in on in the last year, starting May of 2023, is poverty. So some of the programs we have done that dealt with related situations in poverty was Reconnect for Life in 2018, which was ran by Maryland Rural Development Corporation for disconnected youth 16 to 24 years of age who are not in school and who are currently not working. So with that program, I was able to go on a training through the county commissioners and I think the local management board to Boston to learn about other trainings. And some of these trainings, we still on this, we right here. I haven't went, I'm just filling the context up a little bit. To learn about economic mobility pathways. And what it is a program that put participants in to make them self-accountable. So I learned about that, and as well as sustainable communities and bridges out of poverty as well. So this was all from the Reconnect for Life program in 2018 to deal with issues that are under the wide umbrella of poverty. So today we'll be asking for funding for a poverty program, but I want to give you a little bit of context on how the program works and some of the work we have done in the last 8 months running this as a pilot program. So, what issue do we want to address? The issue we want to address is poverty. Over the last 6 months, 6 to 8 months, I think the county commissioners have heard from several community members about poverty, about affordable housing, homelessness, things of that nature. But what the Bayside Hoyas want to do is bring a solution to the situation. And not just a solution that almost come with words of mouth or lip service, but that we actually been implementing in the community the last 8 months to work out some of the kinks of what works. So the solution would be the Hoya Empath solution, which is the economic pathway programming that we're doing. And what this is training to help participants become self-sufficient. So if you go to this page right here, the bridge. So with this training of economic mobility, bridges to sustainable communities, and bridges out of poverty, this program will address 5 improvement areas. The improvement areas would be family stability, which breaks down into housing and family, well-being, which breaks down into physical and mental health and networks, financial management, which breaks down into debt and savings, education and training, which breaks down to educational attainment, and employment and career, which breaks down to your earning levels. So what this program will consist of is, for example, let's say Henry here comes to us and say he's in poverty and he needs help. That can be anything from transportation, employment, food insecurities, tutoring, whatever it is, we're going to help. With the 5 pillars on this self-sufficiency bridge, wherever they are in life, we plug them in there. And the goal is just to move them in the respective 5 pillars up 1 space to show improvement. So with this, what we'll do is meet participants where they are. A lot of times when we do programming, we ask the participants to meet us at a certain level instead of meeting them where they are. So with this type of program and Thrive to Crisis Assessment tool, we can meet participants where they are. The goal of this program is to assist Kent County citizens in poverty to become self-sufficient while teaching them economic mobility and self-independence. We will use professional practices of partnering with participants so that over time they may acquire the resources, skills, and sustained behavior changes necessary to attain and preserve their economic mobility. A lot of times when we work with individuals, we don't allow them to choose their own goals. What's very unique about this program is the goals are self-assessed. They choose their own goals. So how do we track the goals? Once we plug someone into the self-sufficiency bridge, the next slide should be what are the goals, which I already read. But then after that, you should see a mentoring goal action plan. So what this plan does is take the participants, and this is just one way we rate success and track success, but this one is for their own goals that they actually put. So over the last 8 months, for instance, an individual might say, I'm currently not employed, and we will ask them what their goal is. They will say, well, I want to be employed, and we will walk them through the steps of getting employed. Application, interview, how do you dress, how do you communicate, what's your questions you ask, the information you receive, and see if they are able to attain that on their own. What we also do is you see a targeted date for the completion of a goal. We put a timeline on it, but it's not a hard timeline. The timeline is just to get them moving in the right direction by having accountability with punctuality, deadlines, and things of that nature. In this program, once you reach your goals, we acknowledge that achievement, but then we continue to keep moving through the pillars to give you more access to moving up in the goals. Currently, right now, we released this program in a 3-part series. So the first part, I think Commissioner Fithian attended, was the preview of Rethinking Poverty, the documentary at Kent County Public Library. We have also in that time done a presentation at Heron Point. Currently, to date, after releasing this in January of 2024, 40 families have already signed up, and those 40 families total to 143 participants. It ranges from the age of 6 to the age of 82, the range of people within this community. It also is a very big demographic of blacks, white, male, female, but the average family size of the 40 families are actually 4 people. So we have a lot of families that signed up for this that are 4 to 7 people in their household that live at the household median or below the household median for income in Kent County. How do participants sign up for this? They, 1, must be a Kent County resident. 2, they must be living at or below the median for household income or below. And someone in the program must be at least 18 years of age due to some of the content and the things we'll be discussing with people inside of the program. So once again, our original goal was 30 individuals. We wound up getting 40 families totaling 143 individuals. And I think that goes to, I don't want to say a void, but the need for services here in Kent County. So once we saw the people enrolling this fast, our pilot program only had a certain amount of money budgeted for it. So this request today is to supplement some of the things we've been doing to help us collect firm data and also keep the program running to make sure the improvements and the wins we've seen in the last 8 months are legit, so to speak. So with this type of program, you need a wide net of partnerships. Some of the partners we have worked with in the last 8 months of this pilot program: Kent County Department of Social Services, Shrewsbury Parish Church, of course, Harborview Farms, Seventh-day Adventist Church, Modern Stone Age Kitchen, Kenner One Mental Facility, the Kent County Food Pantry, the Militant Food Pantry, Hope Community Alliance Church in Rockville, the Mobile Wellness Team of the Shore Medical Hospital at Chestertown, Recovery in Motion, and right now I would say about a dozen private citizens. With this spectrum, we're trying to get a wide net of Kent County representation. A lot of times, and I'm guilty of this, of doing programs, we focus on Chestertown, and we forget about some of the other pockets. So some of these people we worked with over the last year were strategically picked because of their Rock Hall or Kennedyville location to help us help a bigger wide net of people. These are the confirmed partners who will work with us and continue working, but it's at least 15 more who have not been involved with this partnering or programming yet. And we haven't reached out because we wanted to master some things in the first. Before we reached out, so what have we accomplished in 8 months? In 8 months, we have provided housing for 14 families, whether that's permanent, temporary, or emergency-based. We have gained employment for 5 participants. And just like, this is just a milestone we reached in May, we gave up 400 pounds of food already in May, but it's chicken from one of our partners. But we also do about, I would say, 75 to 80 pounds a month to families in need, most of that fresh produce from Produce Junction, Sam, sometimes the farmer market or one of the food pantries in town. The original ask for this budget was $108,000 approximately. But to justify that, you got to have some type of basis to come and just ask for money, so to speak. So what we did was, this budget request is for a 1-year request. The Reconnect for Life program that I discussed is a similar program. And this model was done in partnership, once again, with Maryland Rural Development Corporation for about $70,000. It was a 2-generation approach to a universal assessment tool that can track participants' progress across time and multiple agencies. Currently, to my knowledge, there is no universal assessment tool with economic mobility pathway programming being used in King County. The funding we would ask for would be funding to help with administrative support, project personnel such as caseworkers, therapeutic consultants, outreach specialists, and transportation. So that original request of $100,000, what we were able to do was secure about $20,000 in funding to use for families in King County with kids for emergency housing. So we would take that $20,000 away from that total right away because we've already secured that. And then if you add in the in-kind time we have from volunteers willing to give their time, it's close to about $30,000. So we brought the price down, if you see on the budget on that sheet, to about $85,000 because we already secured funding and we don't want to ask for more than we can handle or more than we need at this current time. So with this in closing, what it'll be is a large community umbrella with a trusted organization in the Bayside Hoyas and the many partners we have listed earlier today who have worked in the community to build trust and relationship with the families in need and families in poverty, whether it's families that need help with education, family that need help with finances, family that needs help with food insecurities. We have built the trust over the last decade with, I would say, hundreds of families in King County. So a lot of the families are looking for the help, but they're looking for the help from a trusted source where they won't feel like it's a stigma with receiving the help. And that's why we came here today to ask for the assistance and funding to keep this going, to collect real data on the program for the next year. Any questions, comments, concerns?
You have any questions? I mean, this, obviously, we hear you loud and clear that today is not the day that we'll make any decisions. We're just.
Correct, of course.
We let everybody come in and make their requests, so.
Yes.
You have any questions? Then I thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Got some personnel here. Mr. Miller? Are these closed session?
No, so this is, they're not closed session, they're policy, not specific personnel. And the memos are included in the packet, so if you have any questions or would like further discussion on any of the items, Mr. Miller's here to field that.
Okay. Floor is yours.
Well, I think it's kind of the floor is yours.
Yeah, why don't you ask Mr. Miller questions?
I've looked at, this has to do with on-call pay.
Yes, sir.
Obviously,
Oh.
what we're currently doing, which is $40 a week for the employees that have to be on call, and they're restricted from certain activities while being on call, is way, way below the standard. I don't know that what you proposed is a good number. It probably is a good number, but I don't know it's a good number that we can deal with. I'd be a little more, not just speaking for myself, at 150 as opposed to 200.
Yeah, and I understand that. That's why I brought forth that was, if we were using our average and doing the math, that's kind of where that number was. I went a little beyond that, partly because I knew what was going on around the few places that were doing it, and partly from my firsthand interactions with the majority of the staff that are impacted by being on call, and knowing that there had been some very nominal conversation this time last year about the subject. But in my mind, what you just suggested is an excellent step in the right direction.
So I don't think it's ever been adjusted once it's put in place.
We looked a number of years ago, it's been since I was here, we looked at it and we tried to standardize it across departments because it was wildly different from department to department. And that was maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Unfortunately, some of the services that the county is responsible for providing, we have to have folks on call to address emergencies,
Exactly.
both with public safety as well as water and sewer. So,
I just think it would be great if the commissioners, as part of this budget review, give it serious consideration to make a move, like the number you suggested just now. I think that'll go a long way towards the employee relations, towards a step in the direction that I think we need to address anyway.
I mean, the $40 is almost a little ridiculous, to be honest with you, for what, no, I totally agree that
You're
it's
pretty well
got, it
locked
needs
in
to
for
be
7 days
increased.
of,
7 days of.
you can't go anywhere and you can't do anything.
Yeah, right, no.
This is not a lot of money for somebody to, give up their time for a week.
Okay,
There was 2 other memos that I provided. If there's questions on either of those, I'm happy to
Get back to it.
delve into that, or delve into them.
I'd rather table this second one, and probably table the next one too.
That would be my inclination.
to talk about them when,
At a later time,
okay.
if at all.
All right,
I
well, thank you.
understand. And thank you very much for the time on this one. I know the other 2 are complicated.
It can,
Yes, sir. Thank you, gentlemen.
we're just too early in the process, I think, to even start to even think about those right now.
Yeah, and there's an awful lot of moving parts to both of them. I know. Thanks again. I guess I'll see you all in a couple hours.
Pat, you're up.
Okay. All right. So if we go over where we stand today, let me start with the overview.
Anything outdated in here?
It's in the first section, yep. Okay, so since we met last week, we had basically a $45,000 change, and you can see the list of things that came in and out. And most of these had to do with, the largest one had to do with a non-recurring cost, and that was the Bayside project. Just paying cash for that instead of financing, obviously, since we have so much cash. But you can see the things that were adjusted there. So if we go and look at where we are, our revenue position really hasn't moved. We still have 1.9 million in new money. Let's see if we can get this a little bigger here. And if we go down and look at the expense side, our expenditures exceed our revenues at this point, by 8.2 million. And if you look down the categories there, you can see where the increases are by category: public schools, salaries, benefits. So,
What page are you on?
page 2 of the overview.
The overview,
Page-
page 3 in
three,
our
I'm
book.
sorry.
Page 3 in our book.
Yep,
Gotcha.
okay. So if we look at what that means with our fund balance, which would be moving on to page 4 there. We currently project, and again, this is a little bit misleading because it includes the recurring and the non-recurring, but as we sit right now, because we're ending FY '24 with an almost $17 million fund balance, that we could fund everything as it sits now and still have 3.6 million left, but we have a deficit in the recurring. So if we go one more page down here, this is really the best representation of where we sit today. So this breaks out the recurring and the non-recurring costs by category. And on the non-recurring side, we have a surplus of about 5.6 million, but on the recurring side, we're still looking at a deficit of just under $2 million. And on the recurring side, you can kind of see the categories, that we need to look at and where these changes have to come. They have to come out of the public schools, the salaries, the benefits, the allocations, the operating, some of our transfers. There really isn't anything that we can do with the debt service number. So that's kind of where we stand, opening today's conversations. Shelley and I spent some time this week, and we went through and just kind of identified some opportunities that we think exist in these non-recurring categories. So in your books, in the packet on the left-hand side, you have a schedule that says recurring cost reduction options. So it's not in the binder, but it's right in the pocket. So these are the areas that we have to go to find these dollars. And we tried to identify some opportunities. So let me pull this up. Okay, so if we walk through this and look at the categories, and again, these were just things that we think, might be worth reconsideration at this point. With the public schools, I know we had a change in our figure. I'm not sure if we're gonna have a conversation about that or not, but the excess in the budget right now over the local requirement for funding is just a little over $1 million. So that increased a little bit because the requirement went down. So we certainly, we need to talk about that area. If we look at salaries and benefits, in the new positions are the largest dollars. We have 4 new EMTB positions there. I don't know if we want to look at maybe potentially phasing in those 4. You can see what the cost of one of those positions is. I'm not, again, something that maybe we might want to look at. The only other new position is the grant manager, so that also could be a subject of conversation. If we were to reduce the salary increase by 1%, the impact of the salary and benefits would be $183,000. So those are kind of, a couple of opportunities in the salaries and benefits section. County allocations. And I'm not sure if we want to look at this schedule. We have a couple of new initiatives in here that represent a little under 120,000. This might be a tough year for new initiatives. The other thing that we looked at was maybe considering placing a cap on the allocation requests. And so we took a look at what if we capped all of the allocation requests at a 5% increase, and what would that look like? And if we did that, it would reduce the allocation request by an additional $184,000. And you also have a packet, or behind this schedule, you have an allocation schedule, and it shows what that 5% cap would look like. So if you were to go down this, there's really 3 agencies on here that are asking for significantly more than 5%. And the savings on the right-hand side indicates what the savings would be if those allocations were capped at 5%. I think we have similarly taken this approach in the past where we just, didn't have enough dollars and just picked an amount that we were willing to increase them by. So again, maybe an
Let's go back. Pete's here with us. Pete, come up front, please. We have the 4 EMTs. Explain to us explain to me. I know some of it has to do with Betterton probably. Explain the need for them.
Well, the need right now is covering the shifts that we presently have open based on the employees available. and accompanying that with the request from Betterton to expand even further coverage.
Because you think obviously, we'll need additional coverage if Betterton gives up their ambulance.
Yes, sir.
And would two do that?
We would still have the holes that we have before. In other words, those 4 would allow the county to accommodate covering a greater area without the additional personnel. If we take on more area or coverage, we won't have the ability to cover it without bringing more people. It's a matter of covering the amount of stations for 24/7 coverage.
Yeah, I think a good way to think about it is how many stations do you want 24/7 coverage? And/or, I mean, at one point, we were doing 12-hour coverage in certain parts of the county because that's when the high call volume was happening for those particular stations. That might change from station to station. So how many stations do we need to cover 24/7 and/or something less? And then you could back into a number.
I'm just asking for, want some clarification. I mean, look, I was here when we started this program from day one, and we started it with a half of a paramedic / police officer. And every year, we've added a couple positions, 2 or 3 positions, whenever we could, and we've gotten to where we are today, which has been a long journey, but without breaking the county, we've got here. I mean, to where we are today. And I'm just curious if 2 would satisfy us and then hopefully get 2 more next year. I mean, that's the way we've built this thing from the ground up. And if you don't think so, that's fine. I'm just asking the question. When Pat raised the
suggest
issue that we're
having
looking at almost $400,000 worth of additional employees, could we take a smaller step and
If
eventually
you take a
get there?
smaller step, you would still see overtime being used to fill slots, for lack of better words. But yes, I'm not naive enough to say, no, there has to be 4. That's what I've asked for.
And I'm not saying it shouldn't be 4, we're just talking, that's all.
Currently, we have a paramedic and EMTs in Galena. We have them in Rock Hall. We have them in Lynch, soon to be at Vickers Drive. Betterton giving up their ambulance has created a situation where the response time for the folks that live in that particular part of the county
It's going to be longer,
is going to be longer.
sure.
And the thought behind what they have proposed, I think, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, is to have 2 EMTs with an ambulance at Betterton. So
Yes.
there will be a prompt response to the folks that live in that part of the county with a paramedic coming from Lynch or
Galena,
wherever,
probably.
or.
Vickers Drive or, yes,
Or
Well,
Chestertown.
at least there would be EMTs on scene
yes.
with,
We were looking at the failure rate or the inability to get a unit out with anything other than a driver on it, which is, I think, why Betterton, and the chief could better speak to this than I could, but that's why they came to the county commissioners with their request
they
for,
run about 190 calls a year.
pardon me?
They run about 190 calls a year.
Yes,
And better. Medical calls.
And in order to cut down that response time, you think we need 4?
I think 4 would provide the coverage that Betterton has needed in the past and would likely use.
4 would get us coverage at 24/7 at 4 stations, correct?
Yes.
With enough overlap so people could take time off and,
That's the biggest thing, yes.
right.
Okay.
So something less than 4
you
would be
don't-
something less than
If you
that.
don't want to do 4, then you're going to spend the money in the long run, probably in overtime.
No, I just wanted you to
Yeah.
explain to me. I just want, when somebody asks me, I want to be able to explain to the rationale
I mean,
behind it.
that's what we're looking at, sir.
It's been a long project, step at a time, and it's been going on for 28 years, something probably.
Wait till the fire service starts.
Huh?
Wait till they start fire service.
I'll be going with them.
Started John longest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, Pete, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
So the other new position that's still left in here is the grant manager. So,
I think that position pays for itself in the long run.
Yeah, I don't think we want to touch that.
okay, well then, those are really the big chunks in salaries and benefits. We really can't control the benefit costs, they kind of are what they are. So those are the large dollars there. Not sure if you wanna, look at any of the allocation options, either the cap or the new incentives, or look at them one at a time.
Let me ask this dumb question. We have limited reoccurring money, and we have more
Ample.
non-recurring money than I've seen probably in my time here. A lot of it's probably, I don't know where it come from, but this is as much as I've ever seen.
You are correct.
We are not slack on one-time money.
No,
Correct.
Suppose we took enough one-time money to hire 2 of these EMTs this year, knowing that then we'd only have 2 to pick up, but that next year we would know, there's no sense them coming back for more because we're gonna have to pick up the salary from the other 2. We can hire all 4 of them this year using, is that,
you can use a portion of the non-recurring money. I just, it's kind of the fund balance argument, is how much of that do you want to know that you have to fill in next year? But yes, a small.
that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
If it's very important that we're gonna hire these 4
That's about two, but
EMTs,
that's about 200,000 next year. that we-
but then we know we got 200,000 next year, and if we got in a jam, we probably got enough one-time money left over from next year. We wouldn't be mandated that we could still have enough to pay.
We have-
I'm just trying to string it along a little bit to give us a little bit more reoccurring money, but get the same product.
So you could fill the gap, and that's
Yeah.
not a problem.
Yeah.
The real downside, from my perspective, is the bigger gap you're filling, the less the rating agencies, the bond rating agencies appreciate you using one-time money for recurring events. We're probably gonna be going to the bond market in the near future. So if it's a small amount,
Well, this is a pretty small amount in a
right,
$60
they're
million
not,
budget.
they're not gonna say much. I mean, another option, I don't know if you're willing to go down this path or not, but just throwing it out there, would it be to call it a pilot program and say you're gonna fund it for 1 year or 2 years, see how it goes and reevaluate?
My only reason for bringing it up is to try to save some of the reoccurring money, because that's where we have an issue. And we
Agreed.
could take one-time money and pay for 2 of these positions. And next year, if we need to, we'll pay for it again. But if we have enough, we'll go ahead and that'll be entered into the following year's budget. Might just give us a little bit more reoccurring money at a time when we need it. We're not slack on non-reoccurring. One-time money, we got some.
Right.
Just a thought. Go ahead, Pat.
So, as far as other categories to look at, maybe let me skip to the operating. We went through the operating and looked at linear trends, and there usually is, part of the issue is we ask people to project when they've only got 6-month data, and now we have 9-month data. But when we go back and look at it now, we typically find some savings because costs aren't quite as high. Everybody's kind of, hesitant to, cut themselves short. But we went back and looked at it, and I think that $85,000 on there is probably conservative. I think it's probably closer to $100,000 that we can find in the operating budgets to take out. And then another large chunk would be that $170,000 detention center grant, which we think we'll know about next week. So between those two things, there's about $250,000 that we feel, pretty comfortable is gonna come out of the budget. So I think that'll go towards the plus side, but we're still looking for $1.9 million. So if we take the 250 in the operating, if we, do 2 of the EMTBs, then we're looking at another 190. So we've still got, we've still got a chunk we've got to address. Is there, do you want to look at the allocations, or do you want to leave it as it is for right now?
I have a quick question. This takes into account the 600,000 from the health department, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, it's sitting, it's
So they're
all,
getting their allocation, but they're sending about 600,000 of it back.
Right.
So if for some reason next year or the year after, they can't do that, then we will have that shortfall. But this will be the second year now that they've
yes.
been able to fund some of our programming.
So I mean, the county allocation increase this year is almost $500,000, which is a real healthy increase.
But that's not necessarily reoccurring cost.
Yeah, well, these agencies ask for money every year except for the ones from new initiatives, and we fund them.
Sometimes they go down.
They don't usually go down.
Extreme.
Very seldom. Like, we have the health department going down because that one's formula driven.
The Humane Society went down.
Yeah,
No,
no, the Humane Society
For
isn't.
aging.
There were 2 at the bottom of the
I don't
schedule.
think
request went
upper-
down.
No, I think their request went up by about 30K. I'm not sure
They only asked for
Delmar-
31 or something.
Delmarva
Right,
Craft came
right.
out.
Yeah,
Town
but that's
of the
above
Leaf.
what they got last year.
It's above what they got last year,
Right.
but his saying what they requested last year was much more than, what we
Yes.
gave them was more than 31,000.
Right, so that's
So
already-
their requests come down.
No, because that's already in the formula, that additional amount from last year. What they want is an additional 30K this year.
The Humane
I
Society.
understand, but what John was saying, I think, is what they asked for last year was $80,000 or $90,000 maybe.
I think it was even more than that. I was thinking it was
Well,
over
if it is, that
100K. Yeah.
this year, the request is only 31.
But, I mean, it's in addition to that.
I understand how
100,
it
right.
works, I'm just saying what they asked for was less.
No,
The increase, what they asked for
The
is less
increase
this year
is
than
less.
last
Right.
year.
correct.
But the baseline of the recurring cost, like, we always kind of start out, okay, this is what they asked for last year. If we were to fund everybody at the same level, and then we show what the increases are. So everything sitting on the increase is an addition to the recurring cost.
Now, there are a few items in the allocations that are basically capital and could be moved out into the one-time money, right? That hasn't been
Well,
done.
yes and no. I mean, Kent Center is the one, like, they're saying, so last year, I mean, I could argue it both ways. Last year, they asked us for 42,000 and we funded it in operating. This year, they're asking us for 98,000 to rehabilitate homes. So while you can say the rehabilitation of the homes is a capital expense, they ask us for money every year. So they are, there's always an ask. I mean,
But that particular increase could be moved to one-time money.
right, assuming we weren't gonna fund them at all next year.
Or next year, you evaluate it again.
And, yeah,
It's not going into their yearly mandatory costs. It's not going
No,
towards
it is,
salaries
yeah.
or
It-
electric
yeah.
bills.
So we could move that over. But I don't think there's very much else in here. Most of this is operating. There's really 3 agencies in here that have significant requests, over last year.
But several are more than 5 or 6%.
Yeah.
So they're not significant, but they are more than
Right.
5 or 6%.
And again, this was just based on, sometimes when we just, we have to cut something out, we do it on a percentage basis, because it's fair across the board to everybody. Or at least consistent across the board.
I don't know that they would think that was fair, but
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to find it somewhere. So those were kind of our thoughts in the areas. We can go through all the schedules one more time and see what your thoughts are.
whatever you want to do, however you want to handle it.
And I do believe that the public school system is here because they got the final numbers from the state, which have changed a little bit over when was it, last week or 2 weeks ago that they presented. So if you'd like to hear the details of that, Dr. Couch is
That'd be
here.
great.
It's all right, I'll have Elisa stay here because she broke her foot. So she may have to haul her over there if I can't answer the question, it's okay. I just don't want her to have to move, and I brought extra copies of the same PowerPoint if you wanted that.
I was just gonna ask you. We can come to you.
Let me see. Here's another one. Oh, sorry. So if you go to, I'm sorry, there's not page numbers, but it says changes to 2025 revenues local. That's the page. We highlighted all of the areas that changed and the difference in revenue. So you'll see there was a change to the positive on concentration of poverty, and that there are 3 of our schools that qualify for those dollars. Those cannot be used at the district level. Those are monies that go directly to the schools, and they are direct allocations for their use, community, based on their community needs assessment, or their school needs assessment. The biggest change was pre-kindergarten, which dropped by $94,352, and that was due to the state and legislation that passed at this legislative session that stated they would only fund Tier 1 students with poverty versus Tier 1 and Tier 2. So there was a drop in this affected statewide numbers. So that's where those numbers came from, which was a reduction of $73,000, which means the difference now is, for the county share, is $173,573. The next page shows the changes to the state share. And again, it's reflective of the concentration of poverty, pre-kindergarten, which is directly related to Tier 2 students, and Tier 2 poverty, and then Blueprint Coordinator. That money was essentially changed as well to where we are getting $1,427 to pay, for us to pay for the Blueprint Coordinator.
So the 2025 request from us is $1,748,000.
Yeah, because initially when I came in to justify providing our salary placeholder for our employees, which translates to about a 6% increase as well. Our health insurance increase, which is an 8%. And then the positions and the budgetary needs that we have for FY25, which are the amount of additional revenue that we need to pay for dual credit or dual enrollment classes for our students, the teacher at Rock Hall, the increase in operations, a small amount for homeschool reviews, and math teacher at the high school, and a small increase for our CTE programs, which directly relates to the new pathway that we added, which is computer science. Which, when you add those up, that's $512,000. So you add up the amount we need for salary projections. The salary projections with the salary increase also includes benefits. So just so we're clear about that. So the total budgetary needs for FY25 is is $1,054,540. And nothing else changed in the PowerPoint.
What, I guess I missed something. What'd you just say, a million what?
$1,054,540. So there's one slide that says prior, and then there's one slide that says after, which is the reduction in obligation from the county.
And that's what you're requesting from
Yes.
us, is the $1,054,000?
Yes,
And using 800 out of the,
Fund balance.
800,000 out of the fund balance?
yes.
So your state funding went down also?
Let me look back.
21,000?
Yes. Because of the Tier 2 students. I will say that surrounding counties have seen an increase in their local education effort from their counties. They have seen above what they're obligated to provide to their school systems, and they've been able to settle with their bargaining units anywhere from a 8% increase to a 12% increase for their employees. We're not asking for that. We thought that was a bit excessive. But we still have an obligation to get to the $60,000. We're on the hook to get there by FY '27. The only two school systems that have not completed negotiations are us, Kent, and Queen Anne. Talbot got a significant increase from their county. Of course, Cecil County did not get their increase, but they are cutting about 150 positions. We don't have 150 positions we can cut. I think that's probably the total amount of our teachers. Dorchester saw an increase. I don't have all of that in front of me, but that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Okay. Did I do all right? Yeah. I should ask that question. I didn't ask her.
Explain to me what using fund balance will do in a couple years.
Well, if we use it, it won't be there necessarily next year. So we have understandably the largest surplus we've seen in my 28 years here of the one-time money.
I agree.
But if we use it, if we were to plug this whole 1.9 million with non-recurring money, and next year our revenues are at the level that we project, we will have a $1.9 million hole to start with, plus whatever increases are requested. Now, if we still have some of that one-time pot of money, you could probably use it again, but, you know,
Eventually, you
eventually it'll be
gotta make
gone.
up for it.
And the other problem is that we have some really significant projects. So the question becomes, and you're gonna have to, if we use that one-time money for recurring, we will not be able to use it for the projects, and in this environment, when we borrow, we'll also pay, you know, that whatever our borrowing costs are on that money will roll into our recurring costs, because we'll be paying interest. So, you know, we could lay it out, you know, in years, but I don't know that the requests that you're going to see next year are going to be any lower than what you're experiencing this year. So the question is, you know, how long will that money last?
I guess I'm asking for my own, for myself, to better understand it. If we were to use fund balance for a project that's reoccurring, if we didn't have that fund balance the next year, we gotta come up with that
Yes.
amount of money before we start funding that next budget year.
Right. So
Or
you'd
start
be,
finding some cuts.
right.
obviously.
I mean, theoretically, if your revenue stream stays flat, which, you know, is pretty much what the income tax projection is right now, that money is flat. The property tax, what we're seeing, is, you know, somewhere between a 3% and a 5% increase in the last 2 years, and that's representative of what property values are, but that represented 1.9 million in new money. So say everything stays the same, and next year we have 1.9 in new money again, you're gonna probably be looking at the same kind of requests that you're looking at now, and trying to, you know, cut back to match those, but the problem will be that you will have already, the expenses will be higher because of that one-time money, so you'll have to fill the one-time money hole.
We won't even have the 1.9 to play with next year.
Right.
Right, exactly, it would cut, oh, you
Yeah,
mean,
it's,
generally
we
speaking,
would be
yeah.
you'd be in a bigger hole next year.
That's the way I understand it.
Yeah.
I just want to make
No,
sure
you're-
I'm not thinking
I mean-
crazy myself, because
Not crazy.
I think if you use a little bit of it, like, I think that, you know, we budget conservatively, we always hope to come out 1% to 2% to the good. If you used a little bit of it, I don't think it would hurt us. If you started to use a lot of it, I think we could end up in a really
Me,
difficult spot.
Personally, right now, I don't want to, I'd like to not touch it, but it looks like we're going to have to use a little bit of it, but I don't want to use much of it. That's just me, I can't speak for you guys, particularly knowing we do have these, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully it's a middle school sooner rather than later, and we know the jail's coming.
And the borrowing rates are just really scary. I mean, the cost of borrowing money, the debt service that it would add into the recurring side would be significant. Well, will be significant, but if we have some cash to put towards it, it'll be less. I know what you're saying, it's hard to visualize, and I can roll out an example that I can bring
no, I
next
think
week
I
to say, but
understand it.
yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm not thinking wrong, that I just want to make sure what I'm understanding is right.
You're right.
I tend to agree with Albert that, in my opinion, we should try to hold on to as much of that fund balance as we can. Because down the road, we're gonna need it to accomplish some of the capital projects that we have in the way.
Yeah.
I think we could spend some of it. I'm a little leery about spending one-time money on reoccurring costs.
I
Maybe
think,
a minimal amount.
I think a small amount, a relatively small amount, you could get away with. A larger amount could be very difficult.
Next year's not gonna be any worse.
No, nobody's
be
expect,
harder.
yeah, I mean,
And the year after that's even gonna be harder.
Right.
And I just, like I pointed out, and Pat agrees, this is the most one-time money I've seen us ever have.
yeah, and it's wonderful on the capital project side, but it's
Oh, yeah.
not helpful on the operating side at all.
Which we've had a backlog of capital projects, so that is good news. You'll be able to start attacking some of those capital projects.
So, like I said, we try.
We talked a bit, or you talked about the detention center grant possibly. Is it figured in here, or?
The cost is in here, because if we weren't 100% of the.
Cost is in here.
Cost is in there.
The grant is not.
No, so if we get the good news, 170,000 will come out.
Okay.
And that other 85 to 100, I know we can take that out. So that's hopefully 270,000 of our 1,000,009 problem. Let me pull that back up. But then it's, you know, if we're gonna take out, it's got to come out of these areas. It's got to come out of salaries and benefits or allocations or operating. I mean, those are the reoccurring areas where we'd have to reduce.
And I know this number here, which is the capital improvement request for the middle school. I mean, that's a pretty big number, but it sounds like if we don't do that, we're not showing our good faith to the state.
Well, our conversation last week
Right.
was that if we do it, that that if it sits on the shelf for a year or two, it's not gonna,
Right, that's right.
it's not gonna be of no value.
Right.
I mean, it's gonna have value.
That's really, I mean, that really still bothers me.
I don't wanna
because
lose the money from the state.
that, I don't wanna lose the money from the state, but I also don't wanna lose the money from us, and it's like, you know, we've all seen government waste a lot more money than that.
But we don't have any money from the state yet, right?
Well, we have,
It's
we have a guarantee that.
For the design. Are you talking about from the
I'm
construction?
talking about,
The construction.
The construction now.
Yeah.
No, we don't have any construction money yet.
The big dollars.
I mean, I guess this one
and
point
if we
seven
don't
could
get
serve,
that reduction in the percentage, then we have wasted it.
then we have wasted it,
Right.
because we can't afford it.
Of course not.
But there wouldn't be any problem, or I think the place to take this out of would be the one-time money.
Absolutely,
Oh, yes,
no question about it,
right.
because it's not a recurring
Right.
cost.
When was the last time you put a flat percentage on,
Applications.
yeah, allocations?
I mean, that's not uncommon.
No.
A lot of times, for example, if, let's just say in a prior year, the county agreed that staff was going to get a 3% increase, then the increase for some of these partner agencies was limited to 3%. We've done that before.
Yeah, I mean, another way to look at it is if we look at our whole increase percentage, I mean, our revenues are going up 3.3%, that 1.9. One way to look at it is say, everybody gets 3.3%, and what does that look like? You know, if you took every category, I mean,
I
There's-
think we ought to flip through the allocations again, and let's
Oh.
see what, you know, these newer ones that are first time, or ones that we've never funded before, it just might not be the right year to be able to do it.
It's tough to consider new initiatives in a year like this. I mean, not that they're not worthwhile projects, it's
What I've
just,
seen, some of it, they're all great programs, but some of them
Duplication
are
of
duplication
services.
of effort. And it's just not the right time to fund those requests.
it's
So do you
a,
want to run through those real
sure.
quick again?
Do you want to look at the one with the 5% cap or the regular schedule?
You did that 5%
All right, let's look at the 5, yeah.
Up front, right?
Yeah, it was in your side pocket.
Okay. Allocate, it's stapled together here.
Yep.
This one here.
So big,
This
yeah.
one.
Thanks. Come on. Give me 1 second here. Okay. All right, so if we look at this, and for the 5% cap, I ignored the ones that weren't here last year. So if we roll down this, and there's some we can't do anything with. So I ignored the Bayside Hoyas because obviously you can't take 5% over, you know, there was nothing there last year. Chesapeake College, we can't do anything about. We are kind of locked into that 18.9 because of the joint county decision. The public library would be the next one on there. They're looking for a 10%, a little over 10% increase. If we gave them a 5% cap on it, you could see the change in that funding request. And instead of the 77,866 they're asking for, they would
What
get
is their
it.
fund balance, 160-some thousand?
Yes. So they would, you know, they would get 37,000 in additional funding instead of the 77.
Well, I think the first line's coming out.
Yeah, they're, okay, so the new initiatives, okay.
I would encourage initiatives like that to take part in our LMB procurement process.
In fact, yeah, one of the programs they mentioned we run Reconnect for Life.
Yes, that one
Yeah.
came through the county.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll put the first one on hold for now. Chesapeake College, like I said, I don't think we
I
can
don't
do.
think we put it on hold, I think it's gone.
Right, yeah, gone. Chesapeake College, we can't do anything with. The library, if we were to hold it to a 5% cap, there would be a 40,000 savings. Delmarva Community Services, they're asking for a 67% increase.
So that'd save us 29,000, something.
It would save us 54,000. Yeah, they're requesting to go from 87 to almost, to 146.
Oh, I was looking at the wrong column. I was
Right.
looking at the increase,
Right.
58, 59,000.
Of course, this, nowhere on this spreadsheet is the mobility on demand bid that they put in.
Right. So, I mean, these are strictly numerical, so, yeah, their, last year was 87,351. They requested 146, which was a $58,000 increase.
That's
or-
what I said. If we
Yeah.
only gave them half of it, that's $54,000.
Right, if you wanted to cut it down.
53.6, yeah.
It
I
would,
mean,
yep. Yeah, it doesn't, yeah, you could look at them all individually and make individual decisions as well.
I mean, 29,000. If it's going to be a $58,000 increase, and that's,
Yep. The fire companies, we can't do anything with. That's legislated. Kent Center, they're asking to go from 42,000 to 98,000, which is a $55,000 increase. It's 132%. If we were to
that's
cap.
one of them ones that I think you could take that out of, if you wanted to give them some money, that could be one-time money, because it's really, they're using it for capital projects.
capital.
They're using
Correct.
those
Right.
Yes,
ramps to get wheelchairs into the houses and stuff.
yes, we could consider that one differently. Upper Shore Aging, they were asking for 31,000, which was almost a 9% increase. If we held it at 5, it would save 13,000. The Humane Society asked for an 8% increase. If we held that, that would save us 8,900. Upper Shore Regional Council, I don't know, their 12,000, their normal request is not an increase at all. It's all tied to that micro ag grant program. So I think either you would have to, do that or not do that. I don't know that we
No,
could.
I don't think we can touch that.
It's kind of a separate issue, yeah.
I think you could reduce it, but the micro ag program just wouldn't be as robust.
Okay.
And I don't remember what it was last year. It wasn't 30K. Do you remember?
I thought it was 20-something, but,
Yeah, maybe.
yeah.
So that's whatever you decide to,
I think we more than
Fund.
get our money out of the Upper Shore
But yeah.
Regional Council.
Yeah, I would agree
I'm
with
not gonna
that.
touch their budget.
Okay. Soil conservation, they just asked for a little bit over 5%, so if we held that at 5, it would just be a $1,200 reduction. Horizons of Kent and Queen Anne's is another one of those that's a new initiative. If you were going to not consider new initiatives this year, that would fall into that bucket.
Falls into that bucket as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, unfortunately.
I think right now they're scheduled to come in next week. Is that correct? Verizon, I can double check. Okay. Just FYI.
Maybe getting my weeks mixed up, the 14th and the 21st.
If the plan is to cut it, do you still want them to come in and pitch, or do you want us to cancel?
I don't think that we're able to accommodate them this year. That's my opinion.
I know, I mean, I agree, we can't,
I mean, we
if we're
can't-
gonna, yeah, I think we either do all or none with new initiatives, I can't, I don't.
The micro ag program last year was 20K even, just FYI.
St. Martin's Ministries, they asked for a rather large increase, percentage-wise, it was almost 87%. It's not huge, $9,300, but if we held them at the 5% cap, that would save $8,765. Mosquito control, the health department is paying for that, so I just left it alone. The extension office is asking for just a little over 5%, so it'd be like $181 savings there. Small Business Development Center would reduce the request by $1,700. Kent Cultural Alliance would reduce it by $956. and Museums of Kent County, reduce it by 304. And then everything that follows here is an increase of less than 5%. So, again, if we cut everybody back, it would pick up $184,000 in the budget. But if you want to, consider some of them separately,
But that's also, you didn't allow for the one time, so that's still in here, right?
well, I'll move it out of this money, so
saying
either
it's still-
way, it's coming out of.
Right, I understand, but that's not in this number.
Right, so that would increase that number.
Well, here's a thought. That micro ag grant, there's no saying that's gonna be a year-over-year request. I mean, that's a program, a grant program for this coming year. Couldn't we move that to non-recurring?
Yeah,
I mean, it's only
it's a grant
30,000,
match,
but
sure. I would say so. So if we move the 98 and the 30. Those will both help. As far as the other ones, or do you want to talk about them one at a time, or are you in
I think
agreement?
we should leave the Upper Shore Regional Council with what they've asked for, because I think we get our bang for our buck.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
But everything else, if we put a 5% cap on it, and the new initiatives are just gonna have to maybe wait till next year.
did you say Upper Shore Regional Council or Upper Shore Aging? Upper Shore
Regional
Council, okay. And everything else, except for the 2 one-time programs that we move out, leave at the 5%?
For now.
Kemp Center, we'll take that as one-time money, and the other,
The micro ag?
the micro.
Okay. Well, that'll pick up even a little bit more than the 184, because we'd add in the 30, and we'd add in another 40. So it'll be another 70, so we're up to 250, roughly. So 250 with the cap, and then another what's that other number? 118 with the new initiatives out.
What did we got 6% salary
We do.
increases built into it,
We do.
and each percent means what?
$182,715.
So what are we gonna find out, Pat?
Well, count 'em. All right, so that's, the total on those are like let's round to 370. So we're looking for 1.9. We've got 370. What we're taking out of the detention center is probably another out of the operating is probably another 270. So that's 640. So we're still looking.
The Public Works Capital, are we taking that out of fund balance?
It's all one-time money.
So it's gonna come out of fund balance?
in effect, I
Yes.
mean, if you don't spend it, it'll stay in fund balance.
Yeah, it doesn't affect this,
doesn't
it doesn't
affect
help
what
the
we're doing.
1.9 at all.
And this doesn't either, because we have.
No. No.
We're trying. That's at 1.4 now.
So we're looking like for 1,260,000 still.
1, 2, 1, yeah.
said, I guess we can go back. I don't think we're gonna find anything else in the operating. We've gone through the allocations. That kind of leaves, salaries and benefits and public schools.
Leaves what?
Salaries and benefits and public schools.
Right.
And with the salaries and benefits, really, it's just the new positions or the overall increase. I don't think there's really anything else we can, unless we were to look at cutting positions again. Last year, we took 10 positions out. I don't know.
I see
that-
we're still hiring, I see we're still advertising for hiring. Can we have Jim get back to us on how many, or somebody, how long these positions have been open? Because I know that that's what we did last year. I think we eliminated a few that had been open for a year, year and a half, 2 years, and I don't know where we're at with that now.
Okay.
But in my way of thinking, that if there are some out there that haven't been hired for a year or two, then
And I know some of the reductions, have been tough, but,
Right.
but yeah, we can get a hiring update.
So what Ronnie talked about earlier with the two EMTs, with the one-time money, that was about $200,000.
Yeah, so yeah, we could, so now,
Did we take that?
sure,
Do you have
that's
that?
not factored into that
That's not
1.2.
factored into that
No.
1.2.
so now we're
That's a
down.
pretty minimal reoccurring.
I think we're okay with that.
When you're
I'm not-
in the scheme of things, you're exactly right.
If
For
if we
the,
get-
certainly for somebody who needs it.
If we can't come up with that, just a way
Yeah, I
of getting all four of them, but helping the
Yeah,
reoccurring number by $190,000 or so, or 180, or whatever it is.
and a lot of years when we get like right within that 200,000 mark and we can't find that last little bit, the answer has been, well, we'll just use recurring, and
Right.
we've gotten down as far as we can. The other thing that
Maybe you do want to call it a pilot, because
I
okay,
like that idea.
we might want to reevaluate response times and needs.
do you want to call all four of them the pilot or just the two? I know you're, just the two?
Just the two of them.
I think so.
Okay.
Yes, I like that idea.
I think it's a really good idea.
And the
And
other,
then we'll reevaluate the response times and the needs. And
Because
Gather
that's going to
data,
change a little bit with us moving, particularly in that
It
area.
could. It
You know,
could.
especially with Lynch.
That's what I'm saying,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
and the other thing that I would say is, and I just want to put this number out there too, because every time that we rebalance where we need to get to with the fund balance, when we maybe the easiest thing to do is show this slide. Sorry, my screen is sticking. When we look at this fund balance calculation on, here where we show, where we calculate that target fund balance of 7.5%. It's 7.5% of what the budget is. So when we get it down, the budget down, we get that 1.9 million out of it, that target fund balance number is going to go down 7.5% of that 1.9 million, and it'll leave us more fund balance. So it helps the equation. So that equates to about, that 7.5% of a lower total expenses is about 133. So we can take that off our number too, because when we get our expenses down there, that it will change the target fund balance, and so what's available will lessen. What we need will lessen. So we can deduct that out of there too.
You've lost me too.
I know, it's
Just know that the more you draw down
It all sounds
operating.
good what you're saying, but
Yeah.
So
but you've lost
if
me.
if your total expenses are 60 million and you need to have a target fund balance of 7.5, it's a certain number. If you say I'm gonna cut my budget by 1.9 million, then that 7.5 of your total expenses is a lower number. So if the target fund balance goes down, all things being equal, the money that goes into that available fund balance grows, and that's recurring money. A portion of it. So anyway, I did the calculation, if you just, I think it's about 133,000. So if we take that into account, and that is my last That's the last,
That's the
last thing that I think I
Last
can
rabbit.
throw on the pile.
last rabbit.
Yeah, so we had 1,000,006 minus 133. So we are looking for 927,000.
927.
Yep.
You guys made some progress.
Yes.
There's just a little bit to go, but
Yeah.
you're about halfway there.
Well, there ain't no way of avoiding it. The conversation is public schools now. We got to decide what we're going to do with the public school system.
Yes, I think that's where we are.
We're open for suggestions.
Well, we can cut $900,000 from it. We haven't made everybody mad in the county yet.
Dr. Jeffs, can I hear from you again?
We'll take 5%.
Can I hear from you again on these numbers again? If you don't mind.
No, absolutely.
I mean, this
I'm
is
hoping
where it's
she
got to
made a
go.
mistake.
This is where the conversation's leading, so that's where it's got to be done.
So you've seen what we've done so far. And where we're at, you've heard where we're at.
Right, and I've told you what we've done so far.
And you did.
Because we had about $3 million in requests as well. And we pared it down to the
So
551.
last week, we had a conversation about the 500 contingency fund, the 500,000. And it really didn't go anywhere, the conversation. If you had to use that 500,000 to help fund your budget, could you do it?
We're using 800.
I know. But you still have 1,000,006 in the fund balance.
Right, but the same reasons why you're hesitating about using a great deal of fund balance for recurring.
I'm not
Is-
suggesting that you use any of 1.6. What I'm suggesting is that you consider using
That 500,000.
the 500, which then we need to find 400 and some more thousand.
It's still fund balance,
It is, but it's never been used.
but it's still fund balance. And it's still digging a hole that we'll have to get out of.
And I think.
But it's also, and I want somebody to correct me if I'm wrong, it's also digging us in a hole.
Oh, and I think the difference maybe with the situation is that you know that in 2 years that our funding is going to have to go up. Our stream will go up based on the Kerwin estimates to $1.5 million. So, I mean, if you funded to cover it until we got to that point that we were, we know that's coming for us.
But let me ask you, doesn't that set,
I mean, I don't, yeah,
But
I
that's
understand.
still, but that's still the same, let me just use another analogy. Because that basically would put us at using
1.3.
1.3. So next year, that's got to come off the top. So, and that's money we don't have, so we'd have to take 1.3.
come to us for it?
But
and-
you'd have
Wait,
the 1.6, so if you used 1.3 out of the 1.6, would just about carry, but we'd only be able to, we'd be backfilling, I guess, the 1.5.
Right, and the analogy that I would use back when the county was going to give us the 1.5, when the allocation was given to us and then taken away, said you use your fund balance. Essentially, it wiped us out, and the only way we could recover was to close 2 schools, basically, because that was where the majority of that money was to recap and close the 2 schools and then be able to balance out.
But
I
that was
don't
a
have-
population problem. I mean, that was a student enrollment problem, or shortfall as well. It wasn't just
Well,
budgetary.
not really,
It
because
wasn't
what
just budgetary.
we've done every year is we look at our enrollment, and if there are additional students that we have lost at any given school, we reduce staff. We don't just sit on the staff and just say, oh,
But then you
everybody
get- but
carry
it's-
it.
But it, just to your point that we all know, opening the school for 20 people and opening it for the maximum of 1,000 people, it costs the same amount of money to keep the school open. So, I mean, we got to factor all of that
Right, I
in
guess
as
what
well.
my point is, we don't have another school we can close.
No, I'm not, nobody's advocating for closing another school. We
Right.
need to get that out there right now. We're
No,
advocating
what I'm
for-
saying is for
building
us-
But no.
Right.
We're advocating for trying to build a new school. And we're trying to position ourselves, because like Ronnie said, you say, we're digging a hole, we're gonna have a shortfall. Well, you're us. I mean, you're us, the county, we're the one that's funding this. I mean, we're in this with you. We understand what you're saying. We're not, but we're just, I mean, you've sat here, God bless you, for as long as you have, and you see where we're at. I mean, we're at a shortfall of $900,000 here. And, I mean, we gotta find it somewhere, and it's only two other places that we can go, I think. So, and we're not asking, it's the 500,000 number, and I understand what you're saying, trust me, I want you to have that, I wish you had 5 million in there, but we don't. And neither, you don't, and neither do we with these projects coming down the road.
Right, and what I would say is the majority of the request is to provide our employees with an equal salary increase that the county has in, you as a county have it for your employees as well. So if we don't get that equally, I mean, if it's not there, then we have to
Well,
go back and
we've
reduce.
factored in.
We have to go back and reduce our,
If I'm not
salary
mistaken,
requests.
we factored in 6% right now for our
We did,
employees.
and I mean, and we get it, because last year, really, like, even though we had the 6% increase, salaries on the county side only went up 2.6%. And the reason that we were able to fund the 6% is we cut 10 positions. And
That's how we've done it.
Yeah. but
That's
I'm-
how we've done it in the
yeah.
past as well.
So,
But we're down to, I think, we don't have any more meat on the bone either. So we've cut positions as well. Because there was a year that the county's obligation to the school system was $6. We didn't get anything above that. We still gave our salary increases, and we did that through cutting about 12 positions or more.
One
So,
of my big questions, question I have, all we've heard ever since it was passed is Kerwin. Well, Kerwin says that we owe you $250-some thousand.
now 173.
Huh?
Now 173.
107, whatever, okay.
Okay.
In 2 years, the Kerwin is going to be working against us. I mean, we're going to have a big nut to crack in 2 years. It's going to go to a million one, or million three or four. Next year's a million three or four. Next year's a million one. Next year's million three or four. I mean, it's 7 or 8 years in a row. Knowing that when we get to that point of Kerwin, ain't nobody going to be sitting where you sit and saying, oh, look, you've given us enough now over the years. You don't have to give us quite that much. So why would anybody go beyond what we're dealing with Kerwin?
Right.
Kerwin says we owe you, according to you, $170-some thousand.
Right.
What's the incentive for us to go a penny more than that?
Short of wanting to take care, we do want to take care of our of our teachers. Obviously,
I would say-
we want to do that, but we've
Yeah.
also, you're an advocate of Kerwin. You helped design it. And some of the
Well,
meetings.
I helped design the pillars. I did
Okay,
not
well,
design this legislation and the funding. Let's be
So,
clear about
well, I'm
that.
sorry, I didn't mean to
Okay.
misspeak. But, some of the meetings I've attended, the people that are advocating for this have been very clear and said, do not fund any more than Kerwin. And that's what they're saying. Don't fund any more than Kerwin.
Then I would.
Because you're digging yourself a hole when you do that.
Right, then I would say it would be interesting, and I'd be willing to go back and figure that out, but I think of the Eastern Shore school systems, I did misspeak. Cecil County did give more than their local education effort. They just didn't give the amount that the superintendent was asking for. I think they gave 4 million above what they were required to give.
Which still left them with like a $17 million gap.
Right, but what I would say, and listen, that's my colleague, so I'm going to be very careful about how I position this, but a lot of the request was due to reductions and new positions that were added through ESSER, which is the COVID funding, that they wanted to continue. So some of those new positions and programs are going to be cut. There's nothing in our request that accounts for that. All of the positions that we had through ESSER and through Maryland Leads are out of our budget. They are not, we did not sustain them. We did not bring them forward as an additional request. All of those. So if you really want to think about what we cut, we've cut all the instructional coaches, all the additional supports that we had in place that we were able to fund through ESSER are out of the budget. So we have cut positions if you look at it.
And I think too, just the struggle with what I'm saying, so we think we're on a flat revenue trajectory, or we're gonna get about $2 million a year. From the county side, when we get out into those years where we have to give $1.5 million away, we're gonna be running the whole rest of the county on $500,000 of new money. And that's the challenge for them. So that's why they're looking to the future, because.
I understand.
I mean, it's difficult for all of us.
Well,
but that,
yeah.
And I still, I still gotta have something cleared up, and because maybe I'm a little thick or something, but in fact, I know I am. But
I can't be.
let's say for
We all are.
the school board has already said they're gonna use 800,000 in fund balance.
Yes.
Well, let's say that they use 2 more to try to get to where they want. So there's $1 million. Now, next year, won't that all be, there's $1 million, whatever we got to come up with next year, according to Kerwin, if it's 450,000 or something. That means we got to come up with $1,450,000 because they've used this fund balance money for reoccurring costs. Am I wrong?
Unless
No.
there are structural cuts.
But they're never going to have enough forever.
No.
It's going to,
Correct.
those
Fund
chickens
balance?
are going to come home to roost one day.
Yes.
They got, let's say, just round figures, I don't want to get in an argument about it, but let's say they got $3 million. So they do this for 3 years. Somebody's got to make up that $3 million, because then the next increase is on top of
Yes.
that $3 million. So it's not like, oh, we'll use fund balance money and it won't hurt nothing. That's setting the bar for us. The next year, it's got to be on top of that. Increase has got to be on top of that.
Yeah, when
And
that
I
money
think
runs
that's
out,
what-
it would have to come from another source. Absolutely.
And I guess what
So if we
advocate
use
in that-
any of, that's why, I don't even like,
I
look,
know.
we sat here and argued whether we're going to fund 2 people, 2 EMTs out of non-recurring money, because we don't want to dig a hole, and we got probably $5 million sitting there that we're drawing out of. It's minor, but
Right.
this is not minor.
Right.
This, we're getting ready to go into a season for 7 or 8 years where we got to come up with $1 million, 2, 3, 4, or 5 every year, one on top of the other. Plus, we got to make up for this fund balance money that's going to be used somehow. I don't know how you do that.
Right, and that's why I hesitate to use
No,
more than that.
I understand.
I
I'm not
hesitate
sure
to
you
use that.
should use any of it.
I-
That's right, me neither,
I
but-
understand, but if I don't, and I'll advocate on the other side, because.
Blame it on Kerwin.
Right, but even on the other side, if I don't, then that means I'm $1.8 million short, which means I can't even, I don't even know how I cut $1.8 million out of my budget. It's just, it's inconceivable. So what I would say is, it's difficult for the school system, and that's why superintendents have to advocate for their employees, is because, we can't generate revenue. We have to come to you
Well,
to,
the gov-
let
we
me
don't
just finish.
we don't generate that
Well,
revenue
you-
either, taxpayers.
right,
No,
but-
no, no,
but
no,
what
no,
I'm
no,
s-
no. You
what-
cannot give anybody anything
No.
without first taking it from somebody else.
Right, but what I'm saying is, you have the luxury as a county to cover your employees by saying, okay, here's new revenue, we have enough to sustain a 4% or a 5% or 6% increase for our employees, and you can take that out of new revenue. The school system doesn't have that luxury, is what I'm trying to say. We don't have a way of generating additional revenue. We have to come and ask and say, this is what it's going to take to provide salary increases to our employees. This is the amount that we need, and then we have to look at what we generate at the state and the local level and say, okay, what is it that we're short? And that's why school systems, by and large, have to go in and say, this is what we need to sustain and to support salary increases for our employees. If we don't get that, we'll have to go back and say, maybe you get a 0.5% increase. I don't know. I mean, that is the big bucket that we have in our requests to the county, is to provide salary, an equity, an equal amount, if you will, to provide the same salary increase to our employees. Because $173,000 is not going to cut it. Because our insurance increase is an 8%, and you look in your, that translates into, let me look here, because I don't want to misstate it, that's $302,000, just to pay for the increase in health insurance that we have for our employees. That's an 8% increase. I think you guys are expected to go up 10%.
It came down a little bit. It didn't,
Right.
we got the actual numbers, and I think it's more in the 7 or 8% range.
Right. Ours is just 8, which is, it's not good, but it's not bad. So,
But the other, at the end of the day, the problem is that we're short this money, and we gotta come up with it. And I, for one, and I think I can speak for, I know I can speak for my counterparts. I mean, there's only one other way to generate that income, and that's to raise taxes. And we raise the taxes, and we're not helping anybody. We're not helping the teachers that we just gave a raise, we're not helping our employees that we just gave a raise, and we're certainly not helping our fixed income, which there are a lot of in Kent County, Maryland.
Well, it's about, to generate $900,000, that'd be a 3 cent tax
3 cents
increase.
for tax increase.
Because it's about
Right.
300,000% per penny.
Okay.
I'll be a no vote on that.
No, I'm a no vote as well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I don't, so therein lies our conundrum. And it's not that we don't want the teachers to have a raise. Let's face it, it's a tough job. I wouldn't want to do it. God bless each and every one of them.
I have a question. We keep hearing, as I've mentioned before, from the AIB, that to fully implement the blueprint, we can't do everything that we've always done. We need to get rid of what we've always done and just do the blueprint. And on this 2025 budget needs after sheet, we see all the increases. Have there been any decreases? Are there things that weren't funded in last year's budget or in this year's budget that were funded last year?
we have a couple of positions that we were unable to fill, so they're out of the budget. We added a couple of IA positions because we were unable to recruit teachers, so we're going to try to recruit the teachers and then reduce the IA positions. So there's some, but honestly, I don't know that there's anything in the blueprint per se that we've cut. If you look at what we received to support what we're required and mandated to do, we just don't have enough. And I think it goes back to what I said to you when I presented a week ago. The smaller we get, the less units that we generate, and it's difficult because of the economy of scale, excuse me. And so, if you have less than 1,800 students, it just doesn't generate enough to sustain the 5 schools that we have. I mean, it just doesn't. And if you look at other states, they meaning the state, provides additional funding for smaller school systems because of the sparsity and economy of scale and just usually funding formulas don't work for small school systems. It just doesn't. I don't know. I don't know how we get people to understand that. It's frustrating to me personally because I've tried my best to advocate for that, and I thought that we had a friendly ear in the governor's office, and it just
Look,
blew up.
I've only been doing this for 2 years, and I've seen what you've done for advocating for that, and I applaud you and your efforts for that. And I agree that obviously that is.
It was certainly a letdown.
Yeah, where this county.
It was huge.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I provided a complete document to show what they're doing by state and the amounts and the amount that is provided to small school systems and the rationale behind it. Provided all of that to the governor's office, and it seemed like it was going to go somewhere. I was really encouraged, had some meetings with several of the staff at the governor's office, had lots of virtual meetings, and I was promised that it would be brought forward, and then come September, crickets. So, the next superintendent, I'm going to leave all that information with them, and I strongly encourage them to continue on with the fight because it is very, very frustrating to me personally.
Hopefully, we've interviewed a senator's wife or something, or husband or something like
Yeah.
that.
It's very frustrating, very, very frustrating.
I go back to what we talked about last week. And I also have concerns about utilizing fund balance money, which is really going to be a recurring cost.
Absolutely.
It's what it is, what it really is, and I didn't mean to
It just
interrupt,
kicks
but
the can
it's
in.
an artificial increase. It's an artificial way for us to increase their budget, which there will come a time when we have to make it good. That's the problem I have with it.
Historically, and correct me if I'm wrong, and you'll know more when the audit's done, but roughly around 500,000 goes into your fund balance from your previous budget, roughly.
Year over year, traditionally, the fund
Traditional.
balance has grown.
Right.
I don't know that it will this year based on what
Yeah.
And that's a
has
good
been
thing. I mean,
discussed.
that
That is a
means
good
that
thing.
you
Right,
got your
and
job
a lot
done.
of it is just like you all, you will have additional fund balance, and a lot of that is due to people who leave and depart, and you're unable to fill the position, or you have a position that you typically try to fill and you can't fill, or, you allocate the money and you don't have to use it all for whatever reason.
But whoever the next superintendent is, you should be turning over to him or her probably about 2.1 in the fund balance, roughly.
1.6.
Well, 1.6 now, but it could be as much as 2.1.
Depending on how much is
Once
used
your
in
audit's
Right,
done.
24.
Right.
And you still have 500,000 sitting in a line item called contingency, which has never been touched. That's all taxpayer money that has been allocated to the public schools. And I'd like to see some of that 500, or I'd like to see all that 500,000 put to use.
Well, that
Because
500,
you're gonna have a sufficient fund balance.
right.
You know what our fund balance is, you've heard. And we've told you before that we've got your back. We also had a conversation about, because you've had to make payroll throughout the summer sometimes, and you have to have money in your fund balance in order to actually do that. But the finance office can front you dollars. Am I correct, Pat?
Absolutely. We could We can pay the
We
allocation.
can front you dollars, so you don't even have to touch your fund balance.
Right. So what I would say is you have your target fund balance that you have to have in place for operations. We have a board policy that states that we have to have the $500,000 at minimum in our fund balance to cover. So that money is, as, the reason why it's designated as contingency, because that's what the auditor said it, how it had to be noted,
That's
as
how-
reserve
that's how
or
it's set up,
contingency.
And it's never been revised. I would suggest.
I would say it's not never. We put that in place about 4 years ago.
Okay.
Because we were, the reason why we have so much fund balance is just like every other school system and every other county is because COVID, although it was a bad thing, it did help people accumulate and amass fund balance that, you know, is not going to be in place moving forward. We saved money because we didn't have to use the allocation for substitutes. We are now back at using substitutes. So I think we have to be careful about making assumptions that that is always going to be the case, because we're now gearing up, back up to normal operations, if you will, just like every other school system in every other county.
We just seem to be talking about the same thing back and forth, and I don't think we're really accomplishing anything. What I would like to suggest that we all do, that maybe go back, take a closer look, and we're going to continue to look, and maybe try to maybe bring some ideas to us maybe next week on how we can work together to accomplish what we need to accomplish. Because I don't think we're getting anywhere here today.
Unfortunately, I think at the end of the day, there's still just that 1.9 million, and it's got to be carved up some way. It's not going to grow. We're not going to find more money, so.
It'd be rather for you to carve it than for us to carve it.
Well, I think what he means by that is that
We're
you,
not saying-
I think he just means that you might be able to carve it a better direction than, that's, I don't think he meant that in a bad way. I saw you taking it back.
I didn't mean it in a bad way.
No.
I'd rather for you to have control of your request than
Right, it was like when
to
I
put us
asked,
in a situation
Right.
where, we don't run the schools, we just
Right.
want to fund the schools.
Right. And what I would say is, I would come back and say that although our counterparts surrounding areas have given a significant amount of salary increase to their employees, we did not go over the top and request that. We tried to gear our request based on what we saw the county had as a placeholder, and that's what we tried to do as well.
unfortunately, if you'd have requested it, we'd be talking about a larger number, unfortunately. the way
Yeah,
it
that's
looks. I
right.
mean, it's just, that's
Right.
where we're at.
Right. So, I mean, I can't trim off what we need for operations. I can't trim off what we have requested for the increase in health insurance. The placeholder for the salary increases is what it is.
Look, there's always fat in everyone's budget, and I'm not suggesting that you've done anything wrong with your budget, but you wouldn't have a fund balance if there wasn't some fat in it, and we wouldn't have a fund balance in this year's budget if there wasn't some fat in it.
Right.
So we need to find the fat, and for lack of better words, we need to trim it down.
And one thing to consider is maybe salary surplus is, so if, you could look at historical data to see year over year how much under salary comes in, and you don't know where it's gonna be exactly, but due to turnover, you're gonna have some, just like we know that we're gonna have some.
Right.
And maybe allocate some salary surplus dollars, which is a guess.
Right. Well, I mean, listen, we've got two teacher requests or two new teacher addition into the budget. We cut those two positions, that's close to $200,000, but that means large class sizes. So right now, the one request is for Rock Hall Elementary. They had 33 students in that class. Yeah, we could, it's going to affect.
That's your call.
Well, I know, but what I'm saying is, I don't think I don't think what we have requested is fat. I don't. I really don't. I mean,
I'm
we
just
have
suggesting-
been, we have been very, very conservative in what we have requested.
I'm just suggesting that you go back and take a really close look, just like we would ask any other, and not that you're a
Absolutely.
department head, but any of our department heads.
Right,
That's all I'm asking for.
right. And what I would say is our 5% increase is $932,000. So I'm just saying, treat us the same and we'll be good.
All right. Well, we got a meeting at 6 o'clock, so it'd probably be a good idea if we adjourn this one and take a
Is this
break.
your last, this is your last budget, is this your last meeting?
No, it's not my last meeting.
Okay.
It's not my last meeting.
When is your final?
June 30.
Okay.
I'm here till June 30.
I knew your.
You get to